Okay, so let's create some steel materials. If you do a quick Google search of steel and look at images, you get these various different types of steel here. You've got this one here. You've got brush steel. You've got various things going on here. So we're just going to take some of these and recreate them and get them looking nice in Max. So I've just put a sphere here into a render scene. And let's get a basic material and we'll assign this to it. And the first thing, we've got Fresnel here. I'm going to leave this on. Traditionally, this has been being turned off. But what I'm going to do is unlock it here and I'm going to raise these amounts and push these up. But leave that on. The reason I'm leaving it on is because I want to see on the edge here, I want to see a difference where it gets more glossy on the edge. And Fresnel being on will give me that glossiness on the edge. Whereas if I turn it off, I'll get the same amount from the edge in. There'll be no Fresnel on the edge there. Also, in options with V-Ray 3.6, you've got glossy Fresnel here, which means it will be on the edge there. It will also get more glossy. It will become more reflective. You'll see more of the scene and less of the material. So the way this works is this reflection map here. I can just bring this up. And it's basically, so here it's set at about 50%. And that means it's 50% reflecting the scene and 50% this diffuse color. And I can make this any color I want here. So if I bring this up, you'll see it'll almost disappear. And if I turn off Fresnel, it will completely disappear. So this means it's only reflecting what it sees, basically like a perfect mirror. You're seeing the scene there. But if I turn that on and make this black, you'll just get a more realistic image there. And this amount can be brought way up high. And the higher it's brought up, the less of the diffuse there you'll see. 0 means it's off. Okay, so I'm going to set this at about 15. And I'm going to bring the glossiness down. This just blurs the reflections here. So as I bring that down, you get that. And if you look here, here's a steel which we're replicating here with this one. So that's about right. You can see these are stretched. So the way we're going to do these stretched lights here, see how that's stretched? That's not a perfect circle there, that's stretched around. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to put anisotropy, let's try 0.3. And then we can just rotate this. And we'll try about 75. And if we do a render, okay, so that's rendered, and I'm pretty happy with that. That's pretty close to the render. This has got more blue in it, but there's blue light coming into the scene. And apart from that, it's close enough for me. So I'll go on to the next one. Top Z, press W, and I'm just going to make a duplicate of it over here. Instance. And I'm going to make sure here that my propagate materials to instances is off because I don't want my new material going on both of these. Okay, so we'll call this steel. And then we're going to make a brush steel. So we'll just have a look here. Let's find a brush steel. Okay, so we've been looking for some brush steel material which we can copy, and I think this one here is pretty close. So we're looking at this brushing effect here. And for some reason, people like these to have a kind of nickel color, which we're going to leave off for our material, but it can be added in. I'll show that on another tutorial. We'll do a nickel tutorial. But for this, we're going to create that brushed effect. And what we're going to do is I'm going to keep the steel the same. All I'm going to do is get a noise map, and I'll put this into the reflective glossiness. Sorry, reflection map. What I'm actually going to do, just so we can see what's going on, is I need to get this to the right size, this noise. So I'm going to get a new material here, and I'm going to put this into the diffuse, and I'm going to plug this into that material, into that ball, and take my render window and just do a region roughly where it is, and just hit render just so you can see. So the noise here is too small, you can't see anything. So we'll just make the noise bigger. And I'm going to bring this high down to 0.7 and the low up to 0.3. And this just makes it so you can see this black and white more. So let's try this again. Still can't see anything. Let's make sure this is correct. Yeah, it's the correct material. Okay, let's make this even larger. I'm not sure what's going on. We can also try making it smaller in a minute. Might be too big, and that could be also the problem. This is, again, we're not seeing any noise. So let's try making this 1. See if we see a noise. I'm not sure. I think there might be something coming through there. Let's make this 0.1. And let's render. Still not getting anything. Go back to 100. I think 600 was default. Oh, there you go. Now we're starting to see something. So now we just gotta. So basically, I think. Well, I'm not sure what I said add originally. When you bring a noise map in, though, the default amount is 635, and if you render that, it's just too big. You just can't see anything. So we know now with 100 we can see what's going on. And I'm going to reduce this down, try 50. And we'll probably come down lower, but for now we'll leave it at that and just get these lines doing what we want them to do, and then we'll take it from there. So basically what you do is you put this tiling, I'm not sure which one it is, but you basically push one of these up. So try 100, and the other way you can reduce it, try 0.1. Actually, let's leave that at 1 and make that 0.1 just so you can see what's going on. So you get the effect there. And we're going to point 0.1. And we're going to press F9. So it's doing something there. I'm not sure if it's what we want. Let's put that back to 1. Make this 0.1. Press escape. No, that's doing the same thing on the other side. And make that back to 1 and make this 0.1. And I imagine this will go up. Yeah, that goes up. So it looks like we can leave that at 1 and then try this at 0.1 and that one at 0.1. And we should start seeing lines across like that. And that's what we're going to use to create our brushed effect. So this, by the way, is going on the scene units. So, you know, when you come in and you go customize unit setup, this, I'm not sure, it keeps resetting itself. This should be on millimeters, and here it should be on millimeters too. So that stayed on millimeters, but for some reason my display unit scale disappeared. So I always work in millimeters. If you work in centimeters, fine, but you're going to be using different, if you're working in centimeters or inches, your amount here on the noise will be different to mine. So now we want to come down on size here. Let's try 10, and let's add another 0 into this, just so we really get long streaks happening. That's basically the intention here. And that's what we're getting. Now we want to come down even further on the size here. So we'll try, let's try 3. And I press this. Basically, when I change this, and I type 3, and then I press tab, and it goes over to here. So I can't render now. If I press F9, it's trying to put it into there. So I press escape to come out of there. And then I press F9. That's what you're hearing on the buttons which I'm pressing. Okay, so that's kind of getting there. Again, I think it's still a little bit too big. So we'll reduce the size to 1, press escape out of there, and just try this again and see what we get. Okay, now again, I want these to be longer, these streaks. So we've got it at 0.01. We'll just put an extra 0 in here. And in there. Oops. Alright, so we've got these long streaks going on here. And if you want, if you think they're too long, you know, you can always just reduce this amount, maybe make that larger. And you'll see this kind of effect going on. So I think that's about what I want. But like I say, it depends on your material, it depends on your object, it depends on your scene units, what those amounts will be. I think that looks pretty good. The only other thing to look at here is this blur. If we reduce this to 0.1, 0.01, press F9, I'm not sure if that will make any difference. Let's have a look. Makes a difference. Okay, I'm happy with that. One of the things I just want to increase on the sphere. Just want to change these parameters slightly. These are segmented here, so I'm just going to double the size of it. Hopefully we can make it a bit smoother there. Okay, so we're seeing that in there. So now what you do is you just basically assign it into the reflection map here. And if you look at what's happening now, so you're getting this effect. Now the problem here you can immediately see is that this is black, you know, it's being reflective and not reflective. And this is a bit too harsh on the reflection and not reflective amount here. So one of the ways around it is you can come into your noise and you can just raise this up to a suitable amount. So if we set it like there and then render, let's just take a look at the reference image and go back to the render. I think this is more subtle, so we'll just make that more subtle there. We can make this lighter. The other way of doing it, instead of making that lighter if you want, is you can go in here and on this sphere, sorry, on this material, you, in the maps here, you have the amount here, so you can, you know, reduce this amount and it'll mean that it shows this map less and it's more the reflective amount. So in this case, reflection is completely white. So this will also do the same thing as, you know, making that lighter. Another way of doing it is reducing this and making sure this is up nice and high. So I think the size here is too, you know, it's too big. So we're just going to make that smaller. Let's try 0.5. See if that makes a difference. In some cases it doesn't, but let's hope it does. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good, but as you can see here, you know, I'm not liking these bits of noise here, these gaps here. So I'm just going to stop it there, and what's happened is as we've reduced this, this also needs to be reduced at the same time. So we're going to go back to that amount, and we're going to render. And it should get rid of those sort of patchy bits between there. But now it's gone too big. So we're going to try something between, we'll go try 0.2. Okay, great. So that's your brush steel. So we'll do another one here. So I've just looked at various other steels, and we're going to create some of these steels, but we're also going to create this one first. This sort of, old steel. It's not very reflective. It's very, the reflection in it is very blurred. So we're just going to create this quickly. And what we're going to do, I'm actually going to use this in there. Just going to create a new steel here. I'm going to assign this to this end one. Just going to make the diffuse here black. Oh, we're going to put these on. We're going to unlock for now reflections, put this at 10. And put this reflection all the way up. And put the glossiness here at 0.3. This is what we're trying to create. So we'll go here to materials. Just going to drop this in. Center reflection. And let's see what happens here. We'll just do a quick render. Okay, so we're kind of seeing the material here. If you look at the photo reference, we're not getting the amount of reflection here which we need, and that's because this map is too dark to do that. I'm just going to look at the image here, and I'm going to bring this in. I just want to see this area. Actually, what we'll do is we'll put it something like this, and we'll take this into Photoshop, and we'll fix this in Photoshop. Okay, I'm going to try and keep my life easy. I'm just going to crop this down. Just take one of these. And I pressed here, you've got spot healing brush. I pressed J to get to that. And I'm just going to click on these and just click, and they should just disappear. If they're not, you've got to take a look up here. You've got proximity match, content aware, create texture. Click proximity match on this, I imagine it's going to work. Although it'll come out slightly different than if you do the other ones. But if content aware doesn't work, just move over to the other. So this is quite, there's a lot of noise going on here. I'm just going to blur this quite slightly. Blur. 1 should be enough. Okay, we'll save this out. Steel texture. And we'll put this in maps. Okay, so now we've got this. We're just going to get the correct texture in here. And if I re-render, it's going to be just as dark. So I could edit this in Photoshop. Instead of doing that, I'm just going to come in here into Maps, General, and just use a color correction. Put that there. And click Advanced, and I'm just going to put this up. Let's try 5. We can try a bit lower. Let's try 4. And let's make this 0.5. That's a bit too sharp, 0.4. Okay, and we'll just do a test render of this now, see if we're there. Okay, so it kind of has and it kind of hasn't. Putting the color correction, you can't see any texture there now. All right, well look, even though we can see the map here, putting this color correction on is evidenced by the render. You lose all of the detail. So we don't really want to be losing that detail, so we'll just fix this in Photoshop. And what we're going to do is in Photoshop, this is the map. And we're just going to brighten it. Make the darks a bit darker, the lights lighter. And then we're going to blur it slightly. And let's see how that comes in. Let's see how that renders. Okay, if we look at the reference image, you know, you got that there. There's not really much variation in the glossiness here. It's pretty good. Now, I'll show you how to fix one problem which you can hit. Often when you have a model, you know, you're going to have a UVW on there, and your UVW map will be in a box state. So when you render, you're going to get seams here. If I click F9. Okay, so here we can see seams coming in. So the easiest way to handle these seams is you just get maps V-Ray triplanar texture, and you just put it straight into the texture and put that in there. And you can leave this at default. It's got a 0.1 blend, and this size of 1 millimeter just means real world 1 by 1. So you can literally normally just do this. You know, you might need to change this. Let's see. All right, it's literally so it's not going to work. So the problem here is this size. So it's trying to do a real world scale on this. Well, we can try, if we try making it 300, see what we get. See if we see anything. Yeah, there we go. So now we're seeing details, but we're still seeing seams and other stuff going on here. Stop that. So we're going to make this 500. And let's just view this image. So it's just that. This is not a seamless image, remember? So let's try. You're not going to make it so it doesn't tile. What we're trying to do is handle these seams. So the seam here is better, but it's still there. So we can just increase this amount. This 0.1, it can go all the way up to a, I'm not sure what the top, yeah, maximum is 1. So we'll put it at maximum just so you can see the difference. So strangely enough, 1 creates seams here rather than getting rid of them. So let's stop that. Let's try 0.3. And the seam here is less. It's still there. Let's try 0.7. See if this makes it go away. Definitely there with 0.7. Normally this should make it disappear more, but in this case it's not. Try 0.2. Okay, strangely the low we're putting it, the more it's blending, which is the opposite of the way how it's supposed to be working. Well, it's just blending a little bit, but you can see that the seams are disappearing. So we'll try again 0.1 and see, maybe that's the best we're going to get. Yeah, it looks like that's about the best we're going to get. So that just blends over the seams. Actually 0.5 was better, wasn't it? Yeah, here we're getting these lines again appearing. 0.05. We'll try 0.6. Okay, now, because we've got this texture on here, I do want it slightly lighter. But just a tiny amount, so we'll put that in there, and we'll put this at 1.5. And this is how you handle it if you have seams appearing. In this case, we don't need to do this. We don't need to have a UV on the triplanar texture, but this is how you can quickly handle problems. You know, it's rough, but it does handle them. You can do the same with fabrics, and it just blends those corners over. This triplanar puts its own UV on. So if I put that at 800, that looks pretty nice. A lot of detail going on there, a lot of things going on there, and we've got the triplanar texture in there, handling and blurring the edges there. You can see it really. If you know what's happening, it's blurring it here, it's blurring it down there, and it's blurring it here and here. So we're going to do one more thing with this one, just for fun. We're going to put this into. We're going to press Shift. Just take both of those, press Shift, and drag those down, and put that into reflection glossiness. And we can make this one darker instead of lighter. We don't have all this glossiness going on. So let's try 0.3. And we've still got areas here where it's super glossy. So we're going to go into the maps and we're going to say we only want it like 20%. And the rest is the default glossiness. And then we're going to see what happens here. I'm expecting that to just bring in some slight variation here in the glossiness and the shine. You can see it there. Okay, that's that one. And then we're going to just create some grunge textures. I'm going to take this one and just duplicate it over here. Instance. And let's just make a new one. New material here. V-Ray material. And we're just going to use some grunge maps on here. Let's assign that to that. Diffuse black. So I can see what I'm doing. Reflection all the way up. In this case, I'll turn off Fresnel just for the hell of it. Reduce this down to 0.5. You know, if I turn Fresnel on and unlock it and put that at 20. Hardly any difference, some slight difference. Okay. Now really we need a grunge texture. So we'll just Google grunge texture. Normally a lot of people have done grunge and dirt textures for you. This looks pretty good. You can go for one that's slightly higher resolution. Tools size larger than. Let's do 2 megapixels. Let's look for something. Yeah, that looks pretty good, huh? Let's try these. Grunge. Try this. Okay, try these. So we got these 2 grunge textures. We'll try these 2. See how well they work. Just take this, and we basically just have to plug this into reflection. And then what we're going to do is just reduce this down to 50. And then we're going to plug the same one into reflective glossiness. And we'll reduce that down to 30. So it's only the map 30%, and the rest is from here. And then we're going to open this window, and I'm not sure, something like that. Let's render. That's coming up quite nice. You know, if you really want a beaten up grungy texture, you can come in here and you just increase these. Just go at 80 and put this one at 70. You get a much more beaten up steel grungy texture here. Now this has no bump on it. So we'll add a bump here. And we'll take the same map again. I like keeping my work simple. This is blurry, so if I render this now, you know, see this is quite blurry. Looks like tin foil that's been blurred, and if you reduce this, let's give you an example of a difference. If you reduce that right down, and we just do that, region and render, hopefully we see a difference. You see how sharper that is? It's not a lot sharper, but it's quite a bit than this. I often reduce, this is where you see where I reduce the blur. I'll come down to get more detail in, to get more sharpness, to get these craters looking correct, as opposed to over this side where they're just blurred. The edges here are blurred. The edges here are much sharper. So that's what I'll do. I'll let you see this properly. I'll just do a quick render. And we'll just put the blur back on that so you can see what it looks like with the blur. Okay, so you see the difference here? So we've got, here it's blurry, here it's sharp. So the blurred one, just the craters, everything's softer. And with the sharpness, it's sharper. So you get the idea that these are more real, for metal or for fabric. It's kind of important to lower that, or for brick, you lower down that blur. But for other things, you keep it up there. So you have to look at the difference and what's happening and the effect blur has in the bump slot and the other slots when you're creating a material. But I'll mainly adjust it in the bump slot to give a sharper edge to the material which I'm rendering. So we're going to leave that, and we'll do one more, and then we'll render them out for you so you can just have, see the steel. I think this is a bit glossy for my liking, so I'm going to just reflective glossiness. Let's just put in, maps general. We'll just do color correction in reflective glossiness. And let's try 0.5 and see what happens. It doesn't make a difference because the white stays white. Let's try standard brightness. Bring that down. Yeah, there we go. So we'll just bring that down a bit. And we'll do one last render here. Just make sure we're happy. There you go. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, I like that. So we'll do one more, which is just blackened steel. And with blackened steel, you have this oddity because even though it's black and dark, here I've Googled it. If you look at the edge here, it gets quite reflective at the edge. Here it can be quite reflective, but it's black. Here, this is a good example. Here we've got this blackened steel, but you still have all this data going on here. So if we put that into our references, and we use this as the last one which we're creating, blackened steel, which actually shouldn't be in the maps, should be in references. And just put one more there. Call this one H steel. And I'm actually going to use the same one here for blackened. So, and in this case, I'm going to again get another map. I'm just going to grab one of these off the net. Here we go. This will work out perfectly, I think. The maps. And then if we bring up 3D, and we just drop that in here. Put it into reflection. And let's see how that renders. Forgot to assign it as a material. And we can see how that renders. It's not really getting what we wanted. We're getting something like this, but I think what we need to do is add a bunch of extra detail in there. So view this image. That's what we have. If we put that into reflective glossiness, we're going to get that. If we put a color correction in here, I'm just hoping it's going to work, put that at 10. I think we need to take it into Photoshop. Get more grunge going on. Let's put in a curves layer, and we'll get something like that. And we'll save that file, save as. And we'll just flat G for glossiness. Oops. I put an extra letter in there. Let's just change that quick. So let's go back to Max. Oops. We'll bring this down. And we'll just get the glossy one and put that straight in there. Let's try that straight in and see what happens. Okay. So we do need it in via color correction, just not as harsh as it was. Like Let's try 3. Let's try 4. Let's try 5. Okay, and if we put that into there, it's going to get rid of everything. But I think this one here is too dark going in. I want to see some variation as well here, so let's make a variation to the reflection map. Let's try that. We'll just say put an R there. Okay, and we'll just change this to the R one. Okay, and then let's test that, and then we'll just put a bump on it, and we should be good to go, I'm thinking. Okay, what I actually want is I want some more details. Like if you look here, see you've got like these brush strokes here. You don't really have them in here very much, a little bit there, darker. But in here you've got a lot darker. So we're going to add that as well. Here we've got a bit darker, but not the same quality that we have there. So I want to add in that detail. Okay, it's looking pretty nice though. So we'll add that in, and what we're going to do is we're going to do that with reflection glossiness. And we're going to come over here, we're going to take a composite map. So a composite just lets you put various layers together. We'll put that in as layer 1, so that means everything's exactly the same. We can add in another layer, and we'll set this to multiply. We might change that in a minute. But now we're going to take a dirt map. Let's just Google quickly. Dirt texture. If I use these, see how grainy they are? I'll have to do the opposite that I did with the blur. I have to blur it a lot. So I'm going to try and find something that isn't so grainy. Maybe that's not so grainy. Okay, we'll use that. And we're going to put that into layer 2. And change it to overlay. Because see, there's grays here. Like this isn't actually, you view that, it's not actually white, it's gray. So I'm going to, let's just see if we change it to overlay. Multiply makes the darks darker, but overlay should make the lights lighter as well. If we turn it off, on, off, and on. Okay, we'll see that. It might be too glossy now. And we'll do something about that if it is. Now we've got all of these subtleties coming in here. Okay, I quite like that. So what we're going to do, just to finish off, is we'll put this in as a bump. Use the same map as a bump map. And I'm going to reduce the blur. I'm going to put these down to 0.2. Put that 0.2. And this one here, I'll put it 0.2. Let's see what happens. See how noisy that looks now? The bump is set to 30 by default, right? So I probably need to reduce that. Yeah, let's reduce the bump amount. Let's put that down to 10. I forgot I had these set at these amounts, so it seems to be working quite nice at those amounts. But you just need to remember I have those amounts set there, so you know the reflection is partly this and partly the map. This one here is going into bump, and that's what's causing all this noise. So I'm going to put that dry 0.5. See if that noise disappears. Most of it's disappeared now. So, you know, if you set your render settings really high, like, you won't see that noise in the render, but it will increase render time and it will do other things. So I'd rather just not get so much noise in there and get detail coming up. Okay, that's your blackened steel texture. Alright, there you have it. That's steel covered really. And we'll do some other tutorials on creating some other metals. I hope this is helpful.